Hello, welcome to the Guest Show. Today I've got a dear fellow on who had on a few times interviewed me and people liked him. I will complain about that, Neil Salmons. But Neil has been on something called Universal Credit. Saying in my days of writing for the pavement I've written reams on. And I even had a brief experience of it for 3 months. I do remember once, which is a subject I'm going to ask Neil about, is they phone you. This is the days of the lockdown. And one day I waited and waited a phone call. An hour later, no phone calls. I phoned up the service to see what happened. And instead of just saying, okay, sir, we'll rebook you, I was made to feel guilty that day. Like I had made a mistake. So thank you for coming, Neil.
Oh, thanks for asking me back, Ian.
Well, you are one of my experts. Okay, experts without any experience, would be in your case.
Experts in italics.
Yes. So you're on a Universal Credit. We know you're on PIP. You've spoken about that quite eloquently.
Yes, that's right.
But you're also on Universal Credit. How do you find this process?
To be honest, at the moment, because of the PIP ruling, there's not a lot of contact between me and the DWP over it.
So
For instance,
would you tell them what the PIP ruling was?
I'm now receiving extra funds from the personal independence payments, or
Yeah.
PIP, as they call it, which some of the guys may have heard the other podcast that we did about it. And basically, that means that they say that I am not, I have what they call limited capacity for work
Mm.
as far as Universal Credit and the DWP are concerned, which means I don't have to actively look for work. But they also put me on something called work prep, which, from what I understand, means you've got limited capacity, but we would like you to be doing something active if possible. So, for instance, I volunteer, as you know, with a lot of the welfare panels for Expert Link and various other things. And with that, they basically said, yeah, that's fine. You're volunteering, so we're going to say all your commitments to Job Hunt are shelved for the time being. I think my PIP ruling, which is to do with my mental health, goes through until the end of the year when it's going to be reviewed again. And so my volunteering is saying, okay, you've done enough to basically keep having your benefit coming in without any problems. And basically, I only get, whereas I used to get a face-to-face interview with them at the DWP once a week or once a fortnight at most. Now it can be anything from 2 months to 4 months. So I had a meeting yesterday with them, and they don't want to see me again now until the end of April.
Would you? I don't know. You might not even know this, but this is everybody on PIP or just your particular case? Would you say?
I don't actually know. I get the impression that PIP, the impression that I get, sorry, I'm going back on myself a little. The impression that I get when they've got limited capacity for work, this work prep, as they call it, I think that does limit the amount of interaction they have with you. Because, as I say, it takes away the requirement to job hunt, or limits it at least. So you're not constantly being called in to account for yourself in what you're doing to find work. But I've noticed that since I got my PIP ruling in June last year, I had an appointment in August, which they cancelled within a couple of weeks of my PIP ruling coming through and me being awarded it. And then I didn't hear from them until the beginning of November. No rebooking an appointment, which is normally done straight away. If they cancel one, you normally get another one straight away. I heard nothing from them from the end of June right the way through until November. So I do think it probably has an impact, but I don't know what that impact is.
I was wondering when you were talking about, you said that you sat on appointment, then your PIP ruling came through.
Yeah.
This you won't know, but it's a thought. How much communication there is between the people who issue PIP and the part which deals with universal credit?
I would say there's probably not face-to-face or verbal communication. There must be something in the system somewhere that flags me up as having been awarded it. And obviously they've got all my health details on there. But it comes down to a conversation we've had before about at various meetings about interaction between departments. And this is a big thing with me right the way across the board in any industry. These days, it seems to be a lot of departments is kind of compartmentalized. And I know that the DWP says that the reason a lot of information doesn't get passed between departments is because of data protection and confidentiality. But my feeling is if they know that you're on benefit, they know what benefits you're claiming, and they know what your health issue is, and they all work in the same department, why don't they talk to each other? What is the big secret?
Maybe they don't go for the same cups of tea in the day. Now all right, we've strayed into the pit, but let's go back to universal credit as it is.
Sure.
Universal credit, for those who don't know, covers 6, and they're not all benefits, because some of them aren't, because they have child tax credits and working tax credits are part of universal credit.
That's right, yeah.
And what they call housing benefits. Now, I remember I was on JSA when I moved home. If you move home and you're on what was job seekers allowance, which is slowly being phased out. I know some at the moment, and this year they plan to they call it migrate them all over to universal credit.
Yes, yeah.
And I know when I remember when I was on job seekers allowance, I just went into the job centre and filled out a form which was also for my housing benefit.
That's right, yeah.
When I don't know if you had this experience. When I moved to Stratford and I had to do it, I was on universal credit. I was told I had to present my papers to the council for the housing benefit. Did you experience that?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me, because the idea of universal credit is, as it was portrayed, is everything's going to come from one pot.
Yeah, this is why I say that the word universal doesn't really apply, does it? It's a bit of a misnomer, because they do like to keep these things separate for some reason, but it makes it more complicated. And if you get a delay on one side, it can affect things like rents, the general cost of living, eating, paying bills, whatever. It can have an impact if you don't have that.
Well, I don't know if I told you ever, the person who founded this idea of what is called universal credit happened to be a banker.
Oh, really? I didn't
Who
know
worked
that.
for the government.
Right, okay.
That's where the name comes from. He thought of this brilliant name, and I still don't think. And I know that I met somebody. I was involved with an organisation called Cardboard Citizens, which no one knows about. And there was a workshop run by the top guy, which really was a paid workshop. I managed to get a space on it. And I had to meet a woman who worked for a charity. And we were talking about universal credit. And she says, because she had children, she now had to go through, and it was a nightmare for her.
Yeah, I think for families it can be, and that's the thing. Even though the government's always on about, we're doing what we can to help the hardworking families of the UK, but I don't think they actually do in a lot of cases, and it is very hard for people. But what about the single people as well? They need to pay bills, as I always say. They've got to buy food.
It is, ladies and gentlemen, one phrase that annoys me that Mr. Sunak uses. Neil knows this one. I told him I hate it. Conservative Party, the party for the people. But he always states about hard-working families, or about those people who can't work for several reasons, such as I'll use Neil as an example, who need help. It doesn't make sense to me. But now let's go back to universal credit for somebody who's on job seekers as you were.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about the other four. The main thing we're talking about housing benefit, which you get, and you get the minimum, the payment, which is supposed to be, for people who don't know this figure was worked out many years ago that you get, Neil. And the thing about the figure, the problem with it now is that several years ago they had a 5-year freeze.
Yeah.
As you may remember. When they unfroze it, they didn't adjust it to what you've lost. They adjust it by the current rate of inflation, which they do of each year.
That's right, yeah.
So it has been stated by somebody actually in the European Union, actually last year, stated that people on universal credit are living in poverty.
Yeah, I heard this. And I also heard, I don't know how true it is, you may know a little bit more than me, but I also heard that in terms of housing benefit, that hasn't really increased in the best part of 10 years.
Well, it so happened I was talking to Matt about this, Matt Downey, who, as you know, I know him. And we were discussing this, and also discussed it last year with somebody who worked for Crisis. 2020, they froze housing benefit for, what is it? They only unfroze it last year. And Matt put down a statement that he'd actually written a letter to the housing minister at the time, I think it was Grove, asking it to be raised by 30%, which is what the percentage is that people lost.
Yeah.
I saw that on something called LinkedIn, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know, is I suppose Facebook for professionals. I get a few of my contacts, but also I post the podcast on there and other things. And I said, no way. It'll only be raised by 6% by the current rate of inflation, which was then about 6.8%.
Yeah.
I was shocked. They raised it by 30%. So your housing benefit's gone up. The only problem is, well, personally, I think it's a political maneuver to help people. They want your vote.
Yeah,
so you're going to think, and for those who don't know, in March, this was the autumn statement, which is their plans for the budget. That is not the budget. Now, in March, 6th of March, they'll be announcing what the real figures are. And they've already said they're going to do more cuts. And the reason is, I think most people know, they want the vote. It's not about helping you. That's the reason housing benefit are up 30%. And it should have. Now, I'm saying 30% for housing benefit. I think we can say the money you've lost in your benefit could be that amount.
Yeah,
and I reckon it's more.
In that ballpark, I would think, certainly, if not more.
But let's go back, instead of doing a political party broadcast for the Ian Cowman Party, let's talk about the process of universal credit. You talked about the phone calls.
Yes.
I want to go to what we call the commitment that you make. And if you explain to everybody what the commitment is and what the process is.
Well, normally the commitments are basically, it's nothing to do with music. Basically, it's written into your agreement with your job coach how many hours a week you have to job search, look for work, the type of work you're looking for, how you're going to go about it, and it all has to be recorded through your online journal, which you have a password for. And they've now made it even more fun because they now send you a text message the minute that you log in just to verify that it's you. And then I've noticed yesterday they've put a nice little box at the bottom. Please tick and remember me for a week. So that basically means at the end of the week, if I go back in, and obviously a lot of people, I wonder whether it is a way of making sure, obviously it doesn't apply to me at the moment, as you've already said, but I wonder whether it's another means of keeping an eye on people and making sure they are keeping to their commitments. Because if it's going to die and you're going to have to ask for a new verification code to be sent to you by phone or email or whatever at the end of a week, then they will say, you've not been in your journal for a week. So have you actually been looking for work?
Yeah, but okay.
I might be being paranoid.
Yeah, I've had a few. I'm more paranoid than what you've been saying this week. One person talked about DWP surveillance.
Yeah,
He went on to an incredible amount of deaths caused by it. There are some, but not this figure he was saying.
Yeah.
I could not allow that on.
No.
But as somebody who knows about computers, I've got very good knowledge of technical systems. This frustrates me. I had a complaint with Apple this week. Similar thing. As soon as you log in, you get a code to make sure it's you.
Yeah.
So I understand that side of it. But as far as what you were saying is, they can see how many times you look. Look, it's quite easy. I could
I'm
find
sure.
if I had the right technology, I could find where anybody is in the world.
Yeah.
And that's the phone.
Yeah.
All your phones have locations on it. So that's easy. Right. Somebody asked me before, and it was aside, ladies and gentlemen, a couple of friends phoned me up when the injections were in for COVID. And the rumors were they're going to trace you for your injections. And I told them if they wanted to do that, they could have done that 10 years ago. So we're talking the early 2000s. That is easy through an injection.
Yeah.
They don't do it. There is a certain additional technologies needed because after a while, the trace that you get through an injection disappears. But the thing about what you were saying is that's nice. Not to have to bloody well go for the logins. Like there's certain places I log into. Like my email, for example, for the podcast. Last Friday I couldn't log in.
Just sorry, excuse me. Just to be clear, I don't think it stops you having to log in. It just means they don't send you the code for a week.
I know,
you
and
still have to log in as normal, but
they
it
would
just stops
see. They would see. So I'm digressing as I normally do, but they would see the activity on your in the say the file that you're a file. They'd see the activity there.
Yeah.
So they know how much you actively. Some people, I remember, as I said before, years ago, the job centre came out with something called Universal Job Match.
I remember it. I wasn't on it, but I remember it. Yeah.
It was designed by Monster, and I told the person at the job, "This is the worst program I've ever seen because I know about programming." And the funny thing is, you had to have this. I think it's a 12-digit number as recognition.
Yeah, I think you did.
And it was, called Universal Gateway.
That's right.
Everybody in the country has, but a lot of people are not aware of it.
Yeah, they did that for JSA as well, I remember.
Yeah. And what they did was, I remember for myself, I heard other people, when I was working with people I employed, every so often you lose your password.
Yeah.
Not lose it, you couldn't access it even though you're using the password.
Yeah. Wasn't
Um,
perfect in any way.
it was the most imperfect program. Anyway, even for job search, it was imperfect. Just the logging in was difficult enough, but I couldn't believe I had one guy come and see me who didn't know much about computer. He said, "Look, I've tried to log in." So I said, "Okay, let's do a lost password." Can't do that. Don't get lost password. You're supposed to. It says lost password, but then there's a new thing to go, and they send you a new code.
Yeah.
So that's it. So you have a commitment, all right?
Yeah, the commitment, you basically agree the commitments, and then those commitments are reviewed. The meeting that I went to yesterday, as I did in November, was meant to be a commitments review. Now, if I was actively seeking work without a health issue, which, as I say, at the moment has disqualified me, if I had active commitments, then they would be reviewed at these meetings to make sure that I'm still looking for the same type of work, whether there's any kind of assistance they can give me, whether there's anything more they feel I could be doing to find work, any personal details that might have changed. These are all the things that they get you to review. And then they give you a week. Once you've had the meeting, they then send a link to your journal when you have a week to read and agree. You don't agree them in the actual office.
Oh,
You agree on your journal, so there's a record that you have seen and read and agreed those commitments. How much people are actually held to them, I really don't know. I think that would probably depend on the actual job coach who's dealing with the individual. But that is the way it is meant to work.
but I'm going to say, okay, I'm your job coach, Neil. You come to see me. We're talking about an additional commitment I'm going to ask you to make. Surely you would say yes or no to the job coach, even though you've got a ticket afterwards.
Oh yes, you do. You discuss it,
Mm.
but they have control of entering it onto the system, and then the final approval is when you click it and agree it. And I presume if you don't do that, then you will get an automated reminder when that expires. I mean, mine's got to be done by Sunday. So I assume on Monday morning, if I haven't done it, I will get an automated reminder. But also, if you want to be a bit dark and a bit draconian about it, and you know that I'm one of the people who always tries to be positive about the DWP and what they're meant to be doing, you could say, I suppose, that is another form of monitoring, and that is where your sanctions, losing money on your benefit, come in. If you don't do this, then you're breaking your commitments. If you're not following your commitments, then you're breaking the agreement with your job coach, and that's when they can make a decision to sanction you. And as we know, sometimes those sanctions are very, very over the top.
Yeah, there was. I always remember I went to. Well, we were living. Myself and Neil were living together, not in the same house, not in the same place. But when he moved, we had to go to Bromley Job Centre.
Yes.
When I moved, it was when I moved in for years, it was Catford, and I was doing a lot of voluntary work, which they were quite pleased with. I wasn't maybe 8 years away from being a pensioner. There were jobs I could have done, Prime Minister, I know, but they wouldn't take me. Um,
Too good.
I know, too intelligent. Um,
Too.
I went to Catford to see my advisor, and they were quite happy with me. And I sat down waiting, and I saw another advisor with a woman in front of him. She had her arms curled around in a very protective way. And all she kept on saying is like, "Go on, sanction me. Go on, you sanction me." And I will admit, if I'd been him, I would have sanctioned her. But he turned, I think he was brilliant. He turned around and said, "Look, let's cool down a bit. Come in next week, same time, same day, and we discuss it." And people are expecting sanctions, I think, nowadays. Well, they were then. I don't know about nowadays. I mean, because of
Yeah.
COVID, it's changed.
I wonder where they are at the moment. I mean, this is a discussion that I know you and I have had in the past off the podcast.
Mm.
Um, the government rhetoric is all about getting, people who are close to retirement, people who are middle aged who may not have returned to work after the lockdown for various reasons. Could be health reasons, could be financial reasons. I mean, it wasn't a great time for anyone, as we know. But they're all about we need to get them back into work because they don't call us a drain on society, but they give the impression that we're not doing our bit for the country. We're not helping the economy. But when you go into the job centres with a health issue like I have at the moment,
Yeah.
you find that they don't push the rhetoric that the government's talking about. They're more concerned, or they seem to be, in my case anyway, more concerned about your personal welfare. And how are you handling yourself? How are things financially and things like that? So it seems to be totally at odds. But one of the problems that I had, and it was really the only time I really had problems with sanctions, you may remember, was when I had a couple of panic attacks when I was
Mm.
when I was at Bromley, and I didn't attend appointments, and I didn't realise that if you miss appointments, they can put a sanction in place
That's
that you
very interesting.
may not necessarily know about because let's my example that I was having
Mm.
anxiety issues and that's the reason why I had a panic attack. I couldn't attend the meeting. I therefore didn't go online to see what they were asking me to do. I wasn't checking my journal. I didn't phone them because that gave me more anxiety. And because I didn't do that, they took an awful lot of money off me because the minute they start the clock, then those sanctions run until you contact them. And I must have left it about 3 weeks before I felt I was ready to contact them. By that time,
Remember, you only told me when you got the sanction.
yeah,
This. And now I'm just thinking about it. You stated a phrase which is slightly worrying for other people, is you never realised you'd be sanctioned. You
I, I
didn't go
knew
to...
I knew there was a sanctioning process, but I didn't realise that it runs. No one had ever told me that it comes into effect and runs until you contact them. So it's a ticking clock. It's not, oh well, we're going to knock £20 off your payment now, and then we are going to phone you. The contact was all one way, and it's expected that you contact them. And when you contact them, it's almost like hitting a big red button. Okay, we've stopped counting now. But that might be a couple of £100, as it was in my case, just
Mm.
because you haven't contacted them. But they would say all the information about sanctions is available online.
Is
But
it?
if you don't look it up, you're not told.
Is it?
It is, but it's not entirely clear. It could be a lot. They could clarify it a lot better, but they don't. It's very vague, in my personal opinion. Other people may
I
think,
would say, actually, I know that I was looking into pensions as a pensioner, and we spoke about that. If you look on the site how much a pension gets, I think it was, I can't remember the figure was at that time. It's 187 I get. It was a few pence. 85p.
yeah,
They ran on the website, they've rounded up to the whole thing, and I said, hold on a minute, I don't get that money. It's only 15p for every year. What's that a bit? 15p a week?
of course, yeah, yeah.
Being a tight bastard, I want to know why. So it's about 5-6 quid over the year.
Yeah.
And they
But
said
that
to
can be a lot
me,
to people, as we know. That can be a lot to people if they really are, on the poverty line.
but they said to me, that's for people 80 plus. So I said to them, and as somebody who knows about web design, why can't you put online below 80, this is the amount, above 80, that's it. Oh, they didn't say anything to that. But
Yeah,
it's when you said it's not clear about sanctions, I can understand that.
yeah,
I think a lot of things they put on the government website, and I do a lot of searches with the government website looking for information is not clear. I ended up having to go to the actual ministry, which I'm looking at.
And then the other thing that I noticed as well is a bit of to me, it's an insane situation. They take £200 off you, and then you wait. Or in my case, they did anyway, because of the amount of time it took me to contact them again. And then they told me I can appeal, which I did, but the appeal can take a minimum of 2 weeks to however long they take to get around to it. And when you say to them, as I did to my job coach at the time, I think this is unfair. How am I meant to live? They say, oh, well, you could always put in for a loan. But of course, if you take out a loan,
you got to pay
you
it
then have
back.
to pay that loan back. So what's the point of borrowing money just because they've taken money off of you? That doesn't solve the problem.
I know one thing I'm annoyed about. If I was on pension credit, I can get a loan.
Right.
Now, I admit the pension is nice money, but that was one time last year when I needed some extra money.
Yeah.
And as I will admit, ladies and gentlemen, I have very bad credit. Got a credit card now for some reason. But then I didn't have the credit card. And I looked through, I even phoned up the pension office. And this is another fact I want to talk to you about. And the guy was quite nice to me. He says, no, unfortunately, if you're on pension credit, you can get a loan. The idea of pension credit, something on pension credit is it brings them, tops them up to what the pension is. So they're not losing any money. They're actually getting the same amount as I'm getting as a pensioner who's paid the necessary tax. It never made sense to me that I'm actually penalised. I'm told I'm not. Like there are no places that make loans to pensioners unless you've got brilliant credit. And usually you've got to have a house to have that.
Yeah.
Now let's go back to, okay, I understand that. It's quite interesting. This thing, sanctions is a big thing. It always was a big thing. Because you have to, as you said, go through the hoops to get it. Just get the pension, the universal credit. And there's loads of little problems that can occur. I found it very interesting. And when we spoke about this case, your case, years ago, it was 2 years ago, I think it was.
I think it might even be 3 now.
3, yeah. I never thought about that because, yes, you never made that statement. I was not aware that I'd be sanctioned. And that's an interesting, because how many people would be, and I think there's quite a few people in similar boat to you, it is stressful.
Yes.
As I said before,
don't we?
As I said before, the time that I was waiting for a phone call, I was made to feel guilty. All I want to do was make sure what happened to the appointment. You could have been ill for all I know, and nobody had passed my case over.
Well, I had this on a couple of occasions. It's about 3 weeks in a row that someone was meant to be phoning me, and it didn't happen. And on 2 of those occasions, it was allegedly because they couldn't log into their computer. And I thought, well, did you have a cyber attack that disabled your phone as well? Because you could have at least phoned me if you couldn't get into your computer.
Well, that's the thing, you see. It's now, an aside, but it does affect this. When I was in my social work course, the first 6 months I was teaching IT and job search skills. The last 6 months I was in a hostel working with clients.
Yeah.
All their files were online in the cloud, so to speak, as they call it. And I said to them, what if the computer goes down and you can't, you've got an appointment with a client? Now you're going to, surely see some notation somewhere. No, we do it all in the cloud. It's the same thing with what you're saying with the job centre. Everything is in this cloud. And there's no notation. So an example could be is they couldn't get in. So that you said it, they can't get in, so they can't phone you.
Yeah, yeah.
Because they have no notation. Do you think that's fair?
No, personally, I don't. And it comes back to my big bugbear, as you know, which is communication between departments.
Mm.
The legendary one, which I'm sure people will find quite funny with hindsight, I think we both did, was when I was trying to get. I had a mental health before I got my PIP award. Nearly a year before I got my PIP award, I had a mental health assessment to see whether I was meant to be working. And basically, I tried for the best part of a year to get a copy of that report. And everybody just kept bouncing me around from pillar to post. And eventually I got it a year later. But the funniest one that I had was when the benefits went up last time, and the government were making a big deal about the fact that anyone who's on benefit will receive their payments in April. So my April payment come round, and as we know, it's paid retroactively. You don't actually receive it in April. You get the rise in the following month. So in my case, you get it in May. But I didn't know that, so I innocently phoned them up, asked them about the payments, and I kept constantly getting messages coming back to me from someone in their office saying, we don't know about any benefit increases, but if rises are announced, we will let you know.
Yeah, I
So then
remember you telling me that.
I contacted them again and said, well, look, it was in the autumn statements and it was in the budget, and the budget was only a couple of weeks ago. Well, we haven't heard anything about it. And after speaking to the same person about 4 times, I then spoke to somebody else, quite possibly in the same office in Croydon, who told me, yes, they will come in, but you won't get them till May.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
noticed.
communication. How can the communication be
But
so
it is
scrambled
this
about
thing
something?
of okay, my pension arrived in April, and I looked at it. I also have something called attendance allowance because of my mobility. The attendance allowance had been increased for that period. The
Right.
pension had not. So I phoned up because I thought there must be an error. I was then told my pension would be increased the day after I received that one. And when I spoke to you, you were told a similar thing.
Yes.
But if you look at the website, it said benefits were increased from the 6th of April.
That's right.
They did not. So everybody was getting I think everybody was getting a different thing. So once again, it is this information, isn't it?
Yeah. And the information that we had was all over the media months before the increase happened. So I refused to believe they couldn't know about it because it was in the public domain. Why were they telling me that they didn't know anything about it?
That when you told me that, I remember we spoke about it. I was laughing. I couldn't believe that.
No,
I
I
do
couldn't.
think that some of them are not. I think it's like old jobs. We both went to Croydon Job Centre.
Yeah.
I found, apart from one person, everybody very nice to me.
Oh yes, yeah. Yeah. I
And
don't think I've ever had anyone rude in the time that I've been
I'm
claiming
saying
either
you
now
found it
or
difficult in Croydon. You were saying to me at the time.
I felt they didn't really. I'd say I'm not sure they actually wanted to be there because it seemed to be there was no pressure ever put on me about job hunting. I never received any emails telling me, "Oh, these jobs are available." They didn't sort of tell me at face-to-face interviews about any opportunities that were coming up. It's almost like we were going through the motions. What have you done? Oh, okay, that's fine. Yeah, okay, off you go then. And sometimes I wouldn't be in there more than 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, it would take me longer to get there than the time I'd spend sitting at the desk. So I really thought they were going through the motions and didn't really want to be doing the job. But they were sort of older people, whereas I always find that, you know, people who are young and keen and fairly new to the job, they obviously want to make an impression and do the job to the best of their ability. Maybe these guys were just too old.
Yeah,
Says a man who's 55.
unfortunately, we're coming to the end. I think this is an area we would have to look at again, Neil.
Sure.
But I'm going to ask you one final question.
Okay.
I'm going to give you a magic wand. I'm going to say you're the head of the DWP. What would you do?
No pressure.
No pressure.
I think the system needs to be. I think the system in terms of communication between departments, communication with the end user, communication in general needs to be improved. And as you know, we've had meetings with the Expert Link guys where we have sort of put our stories across to the customer service guys at the DWP, and they agree that there's a lot of things that they could do better. But I really don't think I don't think it's that the system's not fit for purpose. I think it was fit for purpose when they put it together, and it's not really evolved.
So it's like, to make a summary of what you said, it's like, this is how we're going to make a cup of tea, but we're not sure what to put in.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've seen, I don't know, I presume they're still there. I know that there used to be, and most probably still are, online unofficial forums where current DWP staff and ex-DWP staff discuss all the things about the system that they don't like. So that even they are aware there are problems. But then, of course, someone could say, okay, then how are you going to fix it? Well, pay me a fortune and I'll tell you.
Well, you might get a chance one day, Neil.
But you never know.
Thank you very much for coming, Neil.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thanks for asking me back.
Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Universal Credit. I hope you understood it. I know quite a lot about it. I know when it first came out, I was volunteering in a day centre and somebody said this will cause more homelessness. And I think it has in certain cases. So if you enjoyed this podcast, please share it maybe with one of your friends. And if you're new to us, you can always join my mailing list. There is no charge. Every time a podcast comes out, I send you an email with a little thing. Usually I put other news in. I then also once a month have a newsletter that I publish. And all you need to do is email me at, I went blank when I did it before. An email at standupspeakoutuk@mail.com. Thank you very much and bye.